Hi there, I'm Zach Kircher, and you're watching Kircher Talks Entertainment. 2024 has officially come to a close, and now it's time for me to start my annual tradition of recapping and celebrating the great art that I experienced in the past year. As usual for my channel, first up for these videos is ranking my first time watches of 2024, meaning these are my favorites among the older films that I watched last year. Now the interesting thing to me is that after becoming a father in February, I thought that I would be watching a lot more older movies at home with my wife, and I certainly did, but I was surprised that I only ended up watching 53 by year's end, at least according to my Letterboxd. I don't know, man, maybe that seems like a lot to other people, but I expected more out of myself. I'm certainly challenging myself to catch up with even more older films in 2025. Notwithstanding, I still watched some pretty awesome movies in 2024, and today, I will be highlighting the ones that affected me the most. Let's get right into it by addressing a handful of honorable mentions first, the likes of which are listed in alphabetical order. Cowboy Bebop the movie served as my wife and I's final hurrah in a movie theater together before she gave birth to our daughter, and boy was it a great film to experience with a crowd. One of the most enjoyable adventures that the crew of the Bebop ever had. People always said that Pan's Labyrinth served as a poignant allegory about the horrors of war, and they weren't kidding whatsoever. This was a truly powerful story, and my favorite Del Toro film that I've seen thus far. Police Story was one of Jackie Chan's earliest film roles, and is also one of his coolest, in which he got to do some of the best stunts you could ever see in a movie. It just so happens that the rest of the action scenes and the pulpy story are also very entertaining. My brother said it best with his Letterboxd review of Sherlock Jr. I don't understand how some of these shots were made. And finally, every September, I find myself going down the rabbit hole of reminiscing on 9/11 again. 102 Minutes That Changed America, an excellent documentary produced by the History Channel, is one of many ways that I did that this past year. Without further ado, let's dive into my top 10 favorite first-time watches of 2024. We'll start with Number 10! There are a couple of movies from my I Have Never Seen review series on this list, and I'm very glad that Midnight Run ended up being one of them. Buddy comedies usually aren't, my thing, since they all usually fall prey to certain tropes, but even for a movie that was made in the prime era for that genre, Midnight Run ended up being more clever than I had ever expected. Sure, to some extent, the movie does follow a set formula for the kind of hijinks that De Niro and Grodin's characters take in this movie. It also got just a little bit repetitive in the back half for me, but what matters is that I truly cared for the adventure that unfolded on screen, and nothing about their journey felt disingenuous. The movie never made it seem like their petty differences and the trouble that they got themselves into would endear them to each other like you would expect from a lesser movie. It's very clear that the two guys at the center of the story want very little to do with each other, and even as they work to resolve their plight by the end of it, the place that they end up felt refreshingly realistic despite all of the goofy antics that happen in this trip from coast to coast. It results in there being something truly at stake, and the on-screen shenanigans feeling funnier than they ever could have otherwise. Midnight Run simply did a great job selling why I should care about this buddy comedy road trip, and for what it's worth, it's now one of my favorites of this kind. Check out my I Have Never Seen review if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this one. Number 9! As someone who always has and always will love the art of editing, a movie wins bonus points for me when it features great editing. It's an even bigger deal for me when a movie such as Blowout, directed by Brian De Palma, has something to say about it, and frames the larger narrative around the craft of editing. Fitting right in with the paranoid political thrillers of the tumultuous 1970s, Brian De Palma's masterwork about a sound effects editor accidentally recording sounds that could implicate an assassination is nothing short of spellbinding. With its lush array of colors, innovative filmmaking techniques, and keen sense of how to use sights and sounds to convey a point, this movie just sunk deep into my soul. My wife and I watched this very shortly after our daughter entered into this world, so it came to me at a time when I was sort of feeling as unsure about the future as I had ever been in my whole life. This movie's cynical outlook probably didn't help, but it certainly caused me to think heavily about how the systems put in place to help us ultimately let us down. It's a fascinating, thrilling journey to get where the story ends up, but the message conveyed through specifically how it ends is just a poignantly bleak note to leave on for its audience. The culmination of this dark mystery's moving parts was shocking for me, to say the least, but it hasn't left my mind since watching Blowout back in March 2024. All of these things, coupled with the fact that so much of these themes are accomplished by utilizing the techniques of filmmaking within the context of the story, make for one as one of the most riveting and memorable thrillers I have ever seen.
Number 8!
Oh boy, this one's just sad to talk about, man. You'll find that a lot of movies on this list are feel-bad stories, I like to call them, that are pretty much like one-and-done deals for people, and Make Way for Tomorrow is no exception. This is the kind of movie where as soon as the credits roll, you feel compelled to call your parents and tell them how much you love them while you're also a blubbering, sobbing mess. You wouldn't expect a movie from the late 1930s to have such a brutally honest and empathetic perspective on life, but that's the greatest strength of this movie, given that the story is about a loving married couple who are forced to separate for reasons that are outside of their control. If that simple premise alone deters you from watching it, I wouldn't blame you for 1 second, because it's so depressing! But believe me when I say that it's not so much of a downer that it has no long-lasting value. Amidst the many touches of sadness are a lot of tender and even funny moments, which serve as a testament to the undying love shared between a husband and a wife. This story obviously touched me on that level, with the main actors poignantly depicting the sincere devotion that a couple like this would have after spending decades with each other. Were it not for the profound longing that these two characters have for each other, the film simply just wouldn't work, buckling under the stress of like the less bearable, annoying characters that surround them. Needless to say, if there was ever a movie that convinced me of my duty to care for my parents as they wax older, it was this one.
Number 7!
There are a couple movies on this list that came strongly recommended from coworkers, and Glengarry Glen Ross is one of them. I'm especially thankful for this movie for 2 reasons. One being that Alec Baldwin's scene in the beginning is an absolute goldmine of quotable dialogue, worthy of meme status more than 3 decades after the film's original release. Imagine my shock when I found out that the Boss Baby of all things referenced it 25 years later, with Alec Baldwin himself no less.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only. Put that cookie down. Cookies are for closers.
The other reason is that my coworker Corbin, who gave me the recommendation, is my most direct teammate in the workplace, so the story and themes hit harder within the context of him recommending it to me. A lot of the value I get from the movies I watch is how I can use their stories to be a better person. To be more specific, how to be a better leader for a team of office workers whose backgrounds, beliefs, and outlooks on life are significantly different from my own. With Glengarry Glen Ross being about the cutthroat world of real estate sales, there was much for me to gain in terms of simply being a better person than these salesmen and their managers are. Don't get me wrong at all when I say that, for this movie is a lot of fun to watch. Some of the most talented white dudes who have ever graced the silver screen are in this movie, such as Jack Lemmon, Alan Arkin, Ed Harris, and even Al friggin' Pacino. They all get the chance to berate each other with the most entertaining shouting matches and creative uses of profanity you could probably think of. A combination of a firecracker script, a tight setting, and a truly legendary cast add up to something truly delicious for film fans to sink their teeth into. And yet, a movie can't just be fun in order for it to stick with me. The story needs to have some kind of relevance to my own life in order for it to live rent-free in my memory. Glengarry Glen Ross is thankfully fun and impactful in equal measure, so that's why it landed in my top 10.
Number 6!
Speaking of fun and impactful movies, I have finally seen all of Hayao Miyazaki's films. Porco Rosso was the last movie of his that I've caught up with, and after having done so, I think it's safe for me to say that this man has the most consistent batting average of any filmmaker maybe ever. Even his weakest movie, Howl's Moving Castle,
There, I said it.
is at least a solid base hit. As for Porco Rosso, this is a home run that features all of the earmarks of a great Miyazaki production. Absolutely gorgeous hand-drawn animation? Check. A wonderful musical score by Joe Hisaishi? Check. A reverence for flying machines? Check. And a hilarious disdain for the Axis powers? double check. But really though, it's great to see movies like this that are completely fine with being ridiculous fun, while also having a serious undercurrent throughout the film. It harbors just the right amount of melancholy to endear you to a story where the main character is a human with a pig head, and you never really get like a full explanation for how or why he got there. And it doesn't matter, because the movie is just so confident in its characters, its themes, and story that it all works in spite of what it doesn't give you. For a movie that is even barely 90 minutes long, it's kind of shocking how much it actually packs into a brief runtime, and how much of it works. This economical and efficient little movie accomplishes more in an hour and a half than many blockbusters can't do in 2.5 hours, and yeah, I just had a blast. What can I say?
Number 5.
There are few things more pitiful than seeing someone be so passionate for something that they are, like, woefully bad at. However, you've got to respect the hustle for people who love their craft so much that they actually go for it and make something, even if their talent may be questionable. That's what makes American Movie, a documentary about the trials and tribulation of Wisconsinite filmmaker Mark Borchardt, so fascinating. The title is fitting because this true story about a regular guy is equal inspirational drama about a regular guy trying to chase his dreams. It's a comedy of errors as you witness him fumble around making his short film Coven. Colvin. And it's ultimately a sad story of a guy who struggles to understand that he's kind of a loser of his own making. However, in me saying that, don't think that this movie exploits its subject in doing all of that. There's just a raw sense of honesty which is completely empathetic to Mark's circumstances. I mean, sure, it's easy to laugh at Mark when he's trying to get his bumbling friends and family to do what he wants. There are a lot of moments like that where you can't really help but laugh, such as some out-of-pocket moments people make, or for the ridiculous incompetence on display.
It's alright, it's okay.
Okay, cut. You gotta bring passion to it. A message. It's a message.
This is for the birds.
Nonetheless, as much as American Movie is a celebration of the creative process, it is a sad tale of a man trying to reconcile his dreams with his reality. Perhaps that's why it will stick with me. For as fun and unpredictable as it may be, it does what the best movies do, give you a chance to have empathy for someone else.
Number 4.
Many of the movies I've already featured on this list are bleak, but I don't think I would be quick to call any of them hopeless. Threads, on the other hand, though, this movie is so morbid, disturbing, and devoid of hope that it has not left my mind for months after watching it. And I don't think it ever will. I don't know if I should be grateful or upset at my coworker and dear friend Colin for the recommendation, for it's the most brutally honest depiction of nuclear war that you could find. But it's the necessary kind of honesty that we all, including myself, could learn from. As terrifying as the actual nuclear strike scene in the film is, especially when you consider the TV movie budget that this had, the story's true power lies in what comes before and after the strike. The film takes a cold, documentary-like approach to depicting its characters and outlining the pre- and post-nuclear scenario in Sheffield, England. How that affected me is that it built so much realistic tension towards the haunting inevitability, the likes of which can very easily happen in real life, if the wrong people make the wrong decisions under the wrong circumstances. We are really just one bad day away from wiping the slate clean, and the supremely suspenseful first half does such a great job at grabbing the audience by the lapels and begging them to not let this happen. After all, the decision to split this story with the nuclear war at the midpoint was genius, because it enables its thesis to make its bleak, horrific points by outlining the cause and the effects. Seeing the regression of society back to essentially medieval times once nuclear winter settles in makes me hope that I would be among the first ones to go in the event that the bombs really do fall. In the end, Threads may just be a simulation of what a nuclear war could actually be like, but it's as close as cinema probably ever will get to showing a post-nuclear world. We're not going to be sipping Nuka-Cola or fighting across the barren deserts of Australia for gasoline. Threads showed me a future where nobody wins, and I hope for your sake and mine that we never see such a day.
Number 3.
Now hopefully this will lighten the mood just a little bit, even though I'm yet again talking about a movie that ends on a pretty downer note. Yes, I have no idea why I always thought that Chinatown would be this stuffy film that only pretentious film bros would enjoy, but I actually quite enjoyed my time with it as part of my I Have Never Seen review series. On a surface level, it's simply a great mystery that is full of effective twists, surprises, and shocking revelations befitting of a noir evoking classic Hollywood. Even with its bright Technicolor presentation and the dashes of 1970s political paranoia, the story is full of the dark humor and intrigue you would expect to find from hard-boiled detective fiction. Those elements made it fun to experience with a small theater crowd on a Thursday night back in early 2024. As is common with the other films on this list though, Chinatown stuck with me for reasons beyond the fact that it's a competently made film. Over the years, I have grown increasingly distrustful of the people in positions of power. I'm not exactly interested in discussing the reasons why on my YouTube channel, but needless to say, thoughtful screenplays like Chinatown do well to play into fears we have about the working man or woman's place in all of this. A story like that coming from Roman Polanski is a little ironic, but the movie nonetheless hits its points home, and it has stuck with me long after the credits originally rolled. Like Threads, its ending can leave one with a sense of hopelessness for their circumstances, but I came away with it empowered to do the right thing even if the odds may be stacked against me. It's my hope that the story of Jake Gittes can affect you in some similar way as well.
Number 2.
Like with Chinatown, I am always intimidated by the idea of finally experiencing films that everyone loves, such as Paul Thomas Anderson's masterpiece, There Will Be Blood. Believe me, I never buy Blu-ray copies of movies before I have seen them, and more importantly, know that I want to rewatch them. But there was a moment some years ago where I just felt that I should buy a copy of There Will Be Blood and decide to watch it someday. I saw it on the shelf of a local video store, and there you go. My opportunity was there, and I bought it. But afterwards, it sat in my collection for a handful of years before my opportunity came on Valentine's Day last year. I was homesick, my wife was at work, and I had the house all to myself. Hey, I'm already feeling sick, might as well stay feeling bad. I'm glad that this was the moment that I finally chose to watch There Will Be Blood, because even after all these years of wondering if it would even match my expectations, I'm glad to say it exceeded them. This colossal epic manages to distill the dark side of capitalism down to a single character, that being Daniel Plainview, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, in one of the greatest performances ever captured on film. What I got as a result of this is not a story which lays any of its themes on thick, but uses the language of cinema to plant me right into Daniel's screwed up, messed up psyche. It's an utterly fascinating story that had me gripped from its quiet opening all the way to its absolutely insane conclusion, the likes of which was delicious as a milkshake, if you will.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I doubt that we'll ever again get a movie that even comes close to depicting the corruptive power of money that the way this does. This and Citizen Kane make for a perfect double feature in that sense, and honestly, I can't think of a more fitting compliment. And yet, even though I consider There Will Be Blood to be one of the greatest films ever made, there is still one movie I watched last year that's better. It's also much more uplifting and hopeful than the majority of films that I've previously mentioned. Ladies and gentlemen, that movie is... There is a very small number of films that I would be inclined to call perfect, and honestly, I think Hoop Dreams deserves to be on that list. Despite being a 3-hour-long documentary about high school boys in Chicago with dreams to, shoot hoops, I could have easily taken in at least another hour or two watching them chase after their dreams. I even dared to call it the greatest sports movie ever made when I published this video, and it's a statement that I will stand by for the rest of my life. Basketball isn't even my favorite sport, so that should speak to the power that comes from this deeply empathetic and human story. Over the course of this epic chronicle of Arthur Agee and William Gates's lives, I felt like I genuinely came to know who they were as people. I know that's a cliche thing to say, and it's not actually true that I could or ever will know them, but director Steve James and his team of editors put together the perfect footage to connect the audience with their lives. Documentaries have a tough time feeling honest to me, and more than perhaps any other documentary I've ever seen, Hoop Dreams embodies that trait of honesty. It's truly a miracle that for all that this film tries to tackle, nothing here is exploitative or sanitized. It's as much of a window into real lives as a movie could ever be. And at the end of the day, all of those qualities and more represent everything that I go to the movies for. Do I watch movies to have fun? Of course I do. Do I also like to escape to foreign worlds and bask in the wonders of a grand adventure? Absolutely. But deep down, I know that if I watch a movie that is just fun and nothing more, ultimately that's just a distraction from the everyday. I truly crave for movies that stick with me, the kind where I come out of the experience feeling as though the story has motivated me to be a better person. Hoop Dreams is that exact kind of movie, for I felt like it taught me how to live a fuller, more empathetic life, one in which I hope I can meet people halfway and help them from a standpoint of genuine understanding. It also encouraged me to be a better father, having seen what Arthur and William went through. All in all, Hoop Dreams is just the pinnacle of what movies can be, and I'm grateful that it came into my life when I needed it most. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to comment what your favorite first watches of 2024 were as well. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. For doing so really does help me out, and I will see you all in the next one.